Hi, I'm Michael Goodfriend, executive producer of the Play On podcast series at Next Chapter Podcasts. You know, everyone involved in our productions plays an integral part in bringing each one of our episodes into being. But I think it's safe to say that if we had to pick one person that we rely on most in realizing each of these series, it would have to be the sound designer. In the Play On podcast series King Lear, our sound designer is Lindsay Jones. He's a Tony Award-nominated sound designer whose Broadway credits include Slave Play, The Nap, Bronx Bombers, and A Time to Kill. He's worked off-Broadway at Playwrights Horizons, the Public Theater, MCC, Primary Stages, and many others. He's designed internationally at the Royal Shakespeare Festival, the Stratford Festival, and more. This is the second half of my interview with Lindsay Jones. How much of the music you create is inspired by just sitting and listening to the performances, hearing Keith David's voice or Aldo Billingslea as the Fool or, GINA Daniels as Goneril? How much of it is that just you closing your eyes, hearing their voices and letting the music come forth? Or do you have the music in mind prior to even hearing their voices?
I'll be honest, a lot of the times it is the performance, most of the time it's the performance. And that's the case for me, whether I'm doing live theater or audio drama or anything else. To me, it has to emanate from the actor's performance. Like, that's the only way I've ever found it to work and feel authentic. Because, here's the thing. You could hire me to create a score for a play like Hamlet, right? And say, okay, here's the scripted Hamlet. Make me a score, and I'll see you when we integrate the music into the show. Whether that's tech or the first mix down or whatever. And I could write what I think would be an idealized production of Hamlet. But when I put those music cues next to the performance, it's not going to fit. And the reason why is because my interpretation of what a moment could be is not necessarily what the actor's interpretation is or what the director's interpretation is. And so, in my opinion, it's so key to being able to hear the voice, hear how they're playing it, and connect to the emotion of that performance. And if I do my job properly, if I really integrate that performance into how I create the music will feel organically seamless to the performance. A lot of times people don't even necessarily realize that music is even there just because they're so focused on the storytelling. And that's what I want it to be.
So you hear a voice like Keith David's and it brings up an instrument or a sound?
Absolutely. Yeah. A great example is, I think this is episode 5. The beginning of episode 5 is Lear in the middle of the storm, and he's raging at the storm. And, he's just sort of screaming into the wind. And traditionally, when this scene is performed by an actor, it's filled with emotion. There's a lot of rage, but I also heard something in Keith's specific interpretation of that. There's a certain amount of bravado in his performance. You know what I mean? That he has this feeling, which is like, no, wind and storm, I control you. I'm in charge of this. I control everything. And so that gave me that sort of adjustment that he makes in his performance, gave me an insight into how the music that I wanted to create I wanted it to feel like a storm and to feel like chaos and, danger around him, but I also wanted to support that sort of bravado that he brought into that moment.
Blow winds and crack your cheeks, rage blow, you cataracts and hurricanes, spout till you have drenched our steeples, drowned our weathercocks.
And I really think my method of doing this is somewhat unusual for people who do this kind of work that I do. And I think it's totally due to my acting background, because when you're a trained actor, the thing that you learn and understand is that acting is just listening and responding truthfully in the moment. You know, you're just listening and receiving, and then you're responding honestly. And that's the whole craft of acting. And so I have taken that and I translate that into music, where I hear a performance and then the music that comes out of me is my direct response to that. So I need those actors for the inspiration that will help me ultimately craft the music to suit their exact performances.
Do you have a preference? You mentioned, composing for stage productions, and the sort of the distinction between that and recorded audio. Do you prefer one over the other?
I mean, the theater is where I've spent the majority of my time and my life. So that's my first love. I will say that I don't know if I would have necessarily become as involved in audio drama and podcasting if it hadn't been for the pandemic. But now that I have done a bunch of these series, different podcasting ideas, I have to say I really do love the audio drama and podcasting stuff. It's really great, and it allows, I don't know if I would be allowed this level of flexibility and freedom in terms of exploring musical ideas and sound design ideas in a show where we only have a few days to tech it. I would be very curious to take this particular score of King Lear and attempt to put it into a live show. I think there's a great deal of nuance that I can control in an audio drama that is less controllable in a live environment because it's live. Things change all the time, and that's the beauty of theater.
You really are in the audio world. It's the mise en scène of right that we talk about for a film director. That a film director gets to kind of create the picture using all these elements: the actors' performances, the sound, the cinematography, and editing, all of that, and it is their vision.
Yeah,
you with a podcast series like this, it's really in your hands. You get to be that auteur in a way. I mean, you've got ERIC Ting giving you direction and whatnot, but it ultimately, you're driving the boat. We don't have anything if we don't have your creativity and your judgment.
Thank you. It's really, it is a really awesome responsibility, and it's intimidating, but also, yeah, if you have a great supportive team like I did with this particular production with you and Miriam and Eric, I felt really supported, and I felt like, well, okay, and it is, you look at every single scene as a blank slate and you say, okay, here's the raw materials I've got, and here's the direction we want to go, and let's really see what the best way to put this together is, and you just sort of you just follow your instincts. And then hopefully people like it.
You've done over 600 live shows. Are there any that stand out to you from your theater experience?
There are several that I feel like have been really, really big turning points for me. And the most recent one is Slave Play, which I first did the off-Broadway production of in 2018 at New York Theater Workshop. And then the first Broadway run in 2019, and then the second Broadway run in 2021. It was nominated for 12 Tony Awards, which is the most in any play in history, which was really inspiring and exciting. But sadly, it did not win a single Tony Award. But I was very fortunate to receive a nomination for Best Original Score and also Best Sound Design of a Play. So, I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled that happened.
You say it was influential in what way? I mean, how did it change things for you as an artist?
There are two ways in which it was incredibly inspiring to me. The first way is due entirely to the play and the production, which is that it is shocking and daring, and many people find it to be controversial, but it does what I think great theater should do, which is that it gets you thinking, it gets you talking, it gets you out of your comfort zone, it questions the sort of preconceived notions of how you look at a certain situation, and it really forces you to be like, wait a minute, why do I think that way? Why do I feel that way? Is that right? Should I rethink this? And I mean, I feel like that's what the best theater can do, is to get people to expand their thinking through the journey of another character, someone that they can identify with. And I feel like every time I watch Slave Play, I learn something new in how people relate to one another. The show is about sexual relationships. It's about racial relationships. It's about how people interact with each other, how people treat each other in a group as well as separately. It really, I just found it completely mind expanding in that way. And I still find myself being incredibly inspired by it. But then the second way in which it really was influential to me is in how I wound up having to create the score for it and the sound design. Because the thing is, I wasn't the original designer on Slave Play. What happened was they had another designer. This was in the off-Broadway production. Very, very late in the process, that designer had to leave the production. And so I had just finished working on another show in Cincinnati. I had flown from Cincinnati back to my home in Los Angeles. I, got in a cab. I took a cab to my house. I was putting the key in the door to my house, and there was a text message on my phone, and it was from Robert O'Hara. And he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in Los Angeles." And he said, "Can you be in New York by tomorrow morning?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." And so I literally pulled my key out of the door. I picked up my suitcase. I went back to the airport, and I flew the red eye to New York. And I got off the plane, went directly to New York Theater Workshop, where they had pulled together a very hasty run through of the play. And I walked into the rehearsal room, and I just was saying hi to everybody. And I said, "So what's this play about?" And they said, "Oh, you'll see." And so then they performed Slave Play. I had no idea what I was watching until it was in front of me. And I was absolutely just completely blown away by it. And they said, "Okay, great. We'll see you tomorrow. Tech starts tomorrow. So, just we'll see you then."
You made it to your wedding.
Yeah, I did. So I went home that night, and I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? I have no idea. How am I going to figure this out?" And so I basically walked into the first day of tech for Slave Play with no plan. I had no idea what I was doing. And I walked in, and I saw the amazing set by Clint Ramos. I saw the lights by Ji-Yoon Chang, the costumes by Didier Ete, and then the actors started to come out and give these performances. And there was no time for me to second guess anything. I had to kind of go with whatever my first instinct was, because they needed material and I had to come up with it right away. So essentially, I created the score and sound design of Slave Play in real time while we were teching it. I was just making it as it was happening.
Loading the luggage for Baltimore.
Exactly. Throwing stuff into the plane.
Yep.
And what that really taught me was to trust your collaborators and not get in your own head, and like, just, you know, if you strip away all of what your own personal sort of like, oh, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? All of those doubts and fears around it, and you're just like, all right, just respond. Just literally just respond in the moment to whatever it is you see, whatever it is you hear. Just respond as openly as you can with no limits on yourself whatsoever. And then that's how I made that show. And that really has taught me, I think that experience really taught me to just be super flexible. And like, since then, it's been much harder for me. Like, I feel like I've gained a tremendous amount of courage by doing that play, that I can walk into any situation and I'm just gonna give myself over to the process and give the best that I can possibly give. And what comes of it, hopefully will work, you know? But I really felt like that was a really freeing experience for me in that way.
It's so inspiring to hear you say all this, because, you know, we as artists, we love to feel like, okay, we want to be able to do this without stress. We want to be able to do this in as relaxed a way as we possibly can. We want to know it all before we get out there. And the reality is that there's no way that you'll ever be ready, right? Yes. I mean, we can say, I'm going to wait till I'm ready, and we end up navel gazing, you know, and retooling and refining. And, you know, you look at Shakespeare's work, and you read about the history of how Shakespeare worked and the duress under which he created.
Yes.
And, you know, you have these gaps in logic in these plays, these impossibility exercises for actors to solve, right? I mean, you know, try to determine what Hamlet's age really is, for instance, or anything like that. You get the sense of somebody who is working on the fly. And it feels like that's just what we do. You know, we are rushing to make it to the plane on time to get to the wedding, because there's no other outcome is going to be feasible, and we can't walk away from it. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it's funny. The name of my show is, the show that I'm putting together for myself is called Get Hot or Get Out. And the philosophy from that really does actually come from jazz, which is you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what you're going to do, or you can just jump in there and do it. And that really has become sort of like the North Star for me in the last few years, about like trying to behave, you know, as ethically and responsibly as I can, and also just be completely open and in the moment to everything without judgment, and just really give over myself as much as I can to the collaborative process and be as available and as helpful as I can possibly be. And that's really sort of my guiding force at this point.
It's also sort of the philosophy of a jazz musician. Am I right? You
totally.
You master the form, but then you have to be completely free to play within that form.
100%. Yes. In jazz music, you know, there's a framework. Jazz composition traditionally works in a very specific way, which is that you have the opening of the piece, which is usually states a theme. And then there is usually a place after that theme has sort of been stated that says, okay, go ride the waves, you know, and one after another, each musician sort of launches themselves into this ocean in which they're going to guide their way through an improvised solo of some kind that weaves inside of that ocean of sound. And then at the end, you come out on the other side, you play the theme one more time, and that's the song. And that philosophy of approaching jazz is in many ways how I think about theater. You know, stay true to the theme, but be willing to really go wherever the journey takes you once you begin the improvisation.
If you're a fan of theater, check out the podcasts at Broadway Radio. Broadway Radio creates podcasts for all sorts of theater fans, industry insiders, super fans, people just looking to stay in touch with what is happening in the theater world. Broadway Radio has podcasts for you. Today on Broadway comes out every morning, Monday through Friday, with 20 minutes of news about Broadway and the larger theater community. On Sunday, This Week on Broadway is a 1-hour show that reviews Broadway, off-Broadway, and beyond. Broadway Radio also has special shows added into their schedule all the time, so that you never have to go without a theater podcast. Their newest show, This Week in Theater, focuses on theater beyond New York, with reports from all over the U.S., reaching the best of the regions. Their team of 10 hosts will bring you closer to the theater than you have ever been. You can check out all of their shows at BroadwayRadio.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Was there anything that surprised you in the creation of the King Lear podcast? Something unexpected discoveries that you made along the way that come to mind?
I think, it's just, there would be times where I would be like, well, God, I have no idea how to solve this. I just don't know what this is. And then I'd be like, and then you would get to those places and think, well, like, in episode 2, the fool has, not one, but 2 moments where they are featured as if they are playing a harmonica and singing a song while playing the harmonica. When I got to it, I was like, A, this is not a song, and B, I don't know how to make this into a song. And I really had to sit with it and figure out okay, I'm actually going to re-engineer this so that it can be. And so there was a while there where I was trying to figure out okay, maybe I can work within his rhythm and sort of figure it out. And that wasn't really working. And so then ultimately I was like, I'm gonna re-engineer this. And so I wound up sort of cutting up his text syllable by syllable in order to invent a new piece of music out of it.
For fools, this has been a hard year, since men in power have grown foolish. When dunce caps become crowns, what'll I wear? In candor, all men are brutish. The future is what I fear.
But it worked in the end. It seemed like it was organic by the end of it. But it was it was surprising to me of okay, this seems like an unpassable road here. And I didn't know whether to call and say hey, should we refigure this or whatever. And then I thought, no, you know what, we're gonna just keep pushing forward and seeing if I can make it happen. And I'm actually really quite happy with the way those turned out. In the end, they seem really authentic.
It almost sounds like spoken word. It's got sort of a rhythm to it. It's got a feel to it that you were able, with the actor's interpretation, to find the music in it and bring it out.
Yeah, it's true. It's similar to this artist named Ken Nordine, who was from Chicago in the 60s, and he created this thing called word jazz that was essentially jazz as if jazz was performed by people speaking, as opposed to musicians playing. And I sort of use Ken Nordine as kind of my inspiration for the fool for these moments.
There was this guy who was a regular guy who lived a regular life. Got up 7:30 every morning, had the same breakfast, kissed the same wife. Goodbye.
You have done a lot of advocacy in your field. Can you talk a little bit about it? You founded an organization and an initiative. Can you tell us what those are?
Sure. So there are 3 sort of major organizations. I don't want to say major. There are organizations I'm affiliated with. The The first one is Theatrical Sound Designers and Composers Association, which is a national organization for people who create sound design and original music for live entertainment in America. That organization was founded in 2015 by a group of sound designers. What happened is that in 2014, the Tony Awards eliminated the Best Sound Design for a Play and Best Sound Design for a Musical awards, which was really painful and difficult for the sound design community at that time. A lot of us were really hurt and really confused that we felt like we were giving our best work and we were suddenly being told that what we did didn't matter. And TSDCA was really founded on the idea of let's be proactive in how we create a community that we can support one another, but also give people who are not sound designers the information and tools of how to better understand what we do so that they can appreciate it. Because music and sound is it's an ephemeral sort of design field. With every other design field, sets, lights, costumes, video, you can see those things. So like you have a visual understanding of what they are. Sound is the only thing that is entirely unseen. And I think sometimes people may take it for granted or people may not understand its value. And so TSDCA was built as a way of creating a community where all sound designers could come together and work with one another, share ideas, help one another, but also to advocate for ourselves in a way so that we could say, hey, listen, we actually do have value. And here are the things that we contribute. And here's ways to learn about that. Let us give you the tools and the information to be able to understand how to utilize us as a resource, because we're here for you. And we believe in theater as strongly as anybody working in it, and we believe in the artistry of what we do as much as anybody who's working in theater. And I think we didn't want that to get lost. Thankfully, in 2018, the Tonys restored the Sound Design Awards, which I was really grateful for. We were all really grateful for. In the addition, the second thing I founded was a thing called the Collaborator Party, which I co-founded with John Gramata, who's another sound designer. When the Tony thing happened, like I said, people were really upset. And a lot of people were like, well, let's have them turn off the sound at the Tony Awards. That'll teach them how important sound is. And I thought, well, that's not fair. I mean, that's not fair to the people who are on stage working hard, the people who depend upon us for, sound to make their jobs work. We can't take it out on them. And so I wanted to create an event where not just sound designers, but basically anybody who feels like they that are not recognized by the traditional award show sort of, construct, to say, hey, theater is a collaborative art, and literally it cannot exist unless every single person on the team is giving their full attention. Let's honor these people who are otherwise not being recognized or not necessarily being held up in the way that some others are for these award shows. Let's recognize what the basis of theater is, which is the collaboration between hundreds of people who all deeply care about what they're doing. And so the Collaborator Party is now a yearly event that takes place on the night of the Tony Awards. And basically, it's just a night where everybody working in theater, anyone who works in theater, is welcome to come and socialize with each other and, and say thanks. And you say, hey, great job. I'm so enjoyed working with you and you really inspired me. And what that grew from being a single party in New York, and it now is numerous parties that are held simultaneously on the night of the Tonys. We usually have it in Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Minneapolis. theater cities, we sort of try and find somebody who can host one of the satellite parties for that. And I'm happy to return. I guess this will be the place where I announce this. We'll be having the collaborator party return in June of this year. After a 2-year hiatus for the pandemic, we're going to do another collaborator party on June the 12th, which is the night of the Tonys for this year. And then the third thing I work is another organization that I sort of help to find and guide is an organization called No More 10 out of 12s. And that organization is based, was really a coalition of artists and designers and actors, producers, directors, crew, engineers, anyone who works in theater. We are looking to help provide resources and information so that people who are producing live theater will create a more humane schedule for their artists to work under. Traditionally, a 10 out of 12, for those of you who don't work in theater, is the hours in which an actor is required to work. They're required to work 10 hours in a 12-hour span during a technical rehearsal process. But what that means for frequently anybody who's not an actor is that they're usually there for at least another 4 hours outside of those hours, which means that for many of us who are not on stage, we're working anywhere from 14 to 16 hours a day, maybe up to 18 or 20 hours a day, depending upon the scheduling. And what we were really learning after we started doing a lot of research and studying the sort of data and science that we collected is that it was having a detrimental effect on people who worked in the industry. People were burning out and leaving, and when we're searching for greater diversity within our artistic community, we're actually discouraging people who come from underrepresented communities by having these work schedules in place, these requirements, which make it impossible for people to stay in without some sort of pre-existing financial support from somewhere else. So I'm very proud of the fact that we managed to get over 125 producing organizations to commit to doing no more 10 out of 12s. We've heard that since theaters started back up, that taking on this initiative has been largely successful. Artists feel more refreshed. They feel able to perform better in any of their jobs. And so it's been a big success. We're still sorting through it all. And I think everybody is, in this post-pandemic theater world, we're all trying to figure out what's going to work and what isn't going to work, because like every day it changes and who knows what's the right thing to do. But the good news is that theaters are now taking worker health seriously. They're taking worker mental health seriously. And I hope that we just keep that trend going and that people feel long-term like they can stay in theater and make a living and have a family and have a stable life that they feel like they can sustain, because we need them. We need these people in our community.
That is incredible. And man, am I grateful. I can tell you, the 10 out of 12s are absolutely brutal. And we as actors definitely, have the lighter load there in terms of those hours. And even at that, especially when you have a family. My wife and I have done many 10 out of 12s and tried to balance childcare and all of it, and it is almost inhumane. And yet the sort of the way that things are in our culture, our society, the arts are like, you feel like you're lucky just to get a job, as an actor, as a designer, as anything. And so it puts you in this place of subservience, even when you're an established professional, and you've got a arm's length of experience on a resume, you still feel as though, you can't say or do anything because you risk losing that job or never being asked back. And, to have somebody like you, really advocating for all of us is an incredible, it's just an incredible asset. So I personally want to thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. And I should also state that I'm just one of many people in this collective, and that there are so many people in the No More 10 Out of 12 group that have done amazing work and made such amazing strides on our behalf. So if anybody's interested in this, I encourage you to visit our website, which is nomore10out12.com, and learn more about that. There's a list of the people who are part of that collective. And like I said, I'm just one of a bunch of people, but I'm really proud of the work we've done, and I'm proud of the people that I'm pleased to stand with in that group.
And yet we have to strike the balance, right? So there is the building the plane as it flies. There is the getting to the wedding aspect of it all. And the pressure cooker that does yield creative discovery and breakthroughs. So striking that balance is kind of the constant struggle as an artist, isn't it? Just knowing, okay, it's never going to be comfortable, but there are things that we can do to make it less stressful.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I am absolutely willing to give total transparency that my journey of being a workaholic, of which I still am, without a doubt, but also like I'm grateful in a way to the pandemic for giving me the opportunity to sort of reframe how I want to try and live my life as a theater artist, in a way to be able to be like, okay, I love my job. I love what I do. I love my family. I love having friends. I love taking care of myself. How can I do all of those things in a way that is responsible as it can be to everybody involved? It is a really, really tough thing to figure out. And I'm not in any way claiming that I know exactly how to do it. But the fact that I have made that a priority for myself as a theater artist has really flipped a switch in me, and I think has flipped a switch in many others, where you now see people who are saying, well, wait a minute, I can't commit to that because then I would be putting myself at a severe risk for my health, and I have to take care of myself. And I think that producing organizations are starting to understand that, and they're starting to make the necessary changes to be responsible to their employees so that they can give them their best work. Because in the end, you can work people all day long, but what you will find is that it's not going to be their best work. And if you feel like you're getting a bargain by working people less days for longer hours, I'm here to tell you that as their productivity decreases, all you're doing is paying a premium for less productivity at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing that the pandemic taught us, and that I'm glad the Tonys figured it out before the pandemic, but we, all of us who are theater artists, our bacon was saved by sound designers during the pandemic. How many theaters were actually able to mount productions thanks to the skills of sound designers? Next Chapter podcast, the Play On podcast series wouldn't exist had it not been for the pandemic, which forced us into, having to figure out how to create theater in the audio space. And fortunately we landed here. If anything has made it clear that sound designers are essential to the process, it has to have been the pandemic.
Well, thank you for saying that. I have to say that is really gratifying to hear, and it's great. Thank you for saying that. The thing that I think has been the most inspiring is that not only do people see us as essential, which is great, and I will take that, but hopefully, yeah, they're seeing us as storytellers. You know what I mean? They're seeing us as as a person we're not just interested in, EQ or like weird technical things or turning on equipment, that we're not just people who live and die by the equipment that we're associated with, but we are in fact deeply invested in telling a story, just like everyone else working in theater. And so it's been a wonderful opportunity to partner with producing organizations and say, actually, let me tell you a story with this material. Let me take your material that you've worked hard to put together with the best talent that you can find. Let me help you tell that story. And that, I think, has been the most inspiring thing to come out of this boom in audio dramas. And I hope it keeps going. I really do.
It certainly will, as long as you're a part of it. It's been great having you with us. I know you have to go real quick. I know we're going to be working on 12th Night next. Anything you want to tell us about that process and how it's evolving, what you're looking forward to? I'm
super excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun. I know that it is based on a previous production that was done at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so I'm just looking forward to acclimating myself in it. My understanding is that it's kind of the music and sound is based on sort of a golden age of entertainment of the 20s and 30s. And which is I have a huge soft spot for that era in my own heart. So I'm just looking forward to being able to support that storytelling experience and giving everybody a really a wonderful way to sort of lose themselves inside of the story of 12th Night.
I can't wait to get into it with you, and I can't wait to talk about it afterwards for another episode of our bonus content when we get to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be happy to.
It's been a pleasure having you with me, Lindsay Jones. You've been listening to the Play On Podcast bonus content series. You can learn more about the Play On Podcasts at Next Chapter Podcast website, ncpodcasts.com. That's N as in next, C as in chapter, podcasts with an S at the end, .com, where you can find other Play On podcast series and interviews, along with talk podcasts like the 500, the 10, the Tough Juice podcast with Karan Butler, and a whole lot more. I'd like to thank Jeremiah Tittle, the founder of Next Chapter Podcasts, and my producer, Peter Musto. Our audio engineer is Adam Bernard, and our editor and sound designer is Justin Cortez. Be sure to subscribe to Next Chapter Podcast for updates on all the latest content, and don't forget to rate and review our shows. I'm Michael Goodfriend, and I look forward to sharing more incredible works in the Play On Podcast series with you, along with lots of enlightening bonus content at Next Chapter Podcasts.